Here in Cape Town, we're experiencing the worst water crisis in over 100 years. Every year, the drought seems to bite deeper and deeper. We're constantly urged to reduce our consumption of municipal drinking water down to about 87 litres per person per day. They call it the new normal. In other words, an end to the way we traditionally use our water. And part of that long-term strategy, of course, is to plant a water-wise garden. The first stage is to decide how much of the garden you want to give up. In my case, it's about 6 square meters of thirsty dry lawn that's never going to make it through midsummer. I've already marked it out with a rope, and that's the bed I'm going to create. But now, it's time for some hard work. Now that the work is done, I'd like to do a little experiment. I'm going to dig a pond. The Cape Flats wasn't always so flat. In the old days, it was an undulating landscape of vegetation and wetlands. I'm going to try and recreate that here, on a smaller scale, of course. There are 5 reasons why you should plant a water-wise garden in Cape Town. Firstly, it requires very little water. Secondly, it requires very little maintenance. No pesticides, no herbicides. Thirdly, it's quick to reward and flowers all year round. Fourthly, it's cheap. And lastly, it'll attract indigenous wildlife. My garden is barely 12 months old, and already there are half a dozen birds that come here, beetles, butterflies, even, don't tell my family, a small snake. Take a stroll around it on a day like today and there'll be 20, 30 species of plant in full.
Now for the exciting part, off to buy the plants. Here's a piece of advice: always try and buy your plants from a nursery as near to you as possible. Chances are they're using the same soil as yours, and at least you'll get the same climate. I live on the Cape Flats. It's a sandy bit of land that joins the Cape Peninsula of Cape Town to the rest of the Cape. These days it's pretty flat. Back in the old days it was covered in thick Fynbos vegetation. I'm going to the very nursery that grows the stuff. I'm thinking about the kind of plants I'm going to buy. The bed I've created has several parts to it. There's a wetland, there's damp areas that will be dried out in summer, and then there's a rocky area, somewhere with a lot of gravel and stones. I'm going to choose plants that suit each habitat. Plants that need to sit in water, plants that like it a little bit damp, and plants that like it high and dry. The nursery I go to has most of what I need. Keeping with the theme of the Cape Flats, here I am on the Cape Flats, quite close to the coast, at a special nursery, Zandvlei, sand wetland if you translate it directly. These guys grow the very plants that used to grow all over here. Flowering proteas, heathers, irises, orchids, all around us. Now, alien grasses and trees. 200 or 300 years ago, a mosaic of colours. Hundreds and hundreds of different species. So it's like an Aladdin's cave of plants. And I've bought plants specific to certain areas. Ones that like to sit in water, ones that like it slightly damp, and dry area plants. Many of these you've heard of before. There are heathers here, proteas. There are members of the daisy family, members of the citrus family. There are members of the hyacinth family here. There's wild mint. Geraniums are here. All sorts of things that are going to adapt to life in my dry, sunny, windy, sandy garden. And so join us for the next episode when we transfer these plants from the boot of my car all the way through to my garden.